Headline today that brings us back 3 decades when Eric Smith was sent to prison as a young teenager. Today, Eric Smith is a free man.
A Manson family member and an Olympian turned criminal are all seeking a second chance at life. Some crimes are truly unforgivable, but these criminals might actually get a second chance in 2024. First up is Mark David Chapman, the man who ended it all for legendary musician John. It's hard to fathom that this man could ever see the outside world again, but 2024 might be the year that he gets released from prison. Of course, Chapman made a name for himself for all the wrong reasons on December 9, 1980. Chapman actually arrived outside Lennon's New York City apartment building earlier in the day for an autograph before he decided to wait around for the musician to return home. It didn't take long for Lennon to walk back to his apartment, and that's when Chapman carried out his infamous attack. While the attack seemed completely random at first, it was later discovered that Chapman was more than likely motivated by religious beliefs. The church that Chapman belonged to really didn't appreciate Lennon stating that the Beatles were bigger than Jesus, and this really sent Chapman over the edge. He didn't even try to flee the scene after he'd committed his crime and just waited for the police to arrive and take him away. He's been serving a life sentence in a New York State prison ever since the incident, but that might come to an end very soon. Although his appeals for an early release have been denied on every occasion, New York State law allows him the chance to appeal every 2 years. Some people believe that 2024 will be the year that he actually gets his wish and might be able to walk the streets of New York City once again. Now we have the deadly giant known as Edmund Kemper. This criminal committed a slew of deadly crimes before he was finally captured. Kemper might have come off as a gentle giant at first, but he was hiding a very dark personality that had been brewing for many years. It all started off when Kemper targeted his own grandparents with a deadly attack when he was just 15 years old. This was really just the catalyst for a terrible crime spree that took place between 1972 and 1973. Kemper was targeting female hitchhikers at the time and was seemingly using his charm to get them into his car. He also happened to be incredibly smart with a reported IQ of 145. This helped him manipulate his unsuspecting passengers before he would unleash his dark side and perform some truly horrific acts. His 6'9" stature also made it difficult for anyone to fight back. This meant that Kemper was one of the most dangerous criminals around. The scariest part about all of this was that Kemper was actually getting away with it as his supreme intelligence was allowing him to dodge any suspicion or investigations. It wasn't until he finally decided to confess to his terrible crimes that he was handed a life sentence. While it seemed like Kemper was finally off the streets for good, it now appears that he will get a second chance at life. Kemper is eligible for parole this year, but one can only hope that the nature of his crimes will ensure that he remains in prison for the long haul. Now here's one of the members of the Charles Manson crime family who could be released in 2024. Patricia Krenwinkel was just one of the many members of the deadly crime ring that wreaked havoc on Southern California in the 1960s. Charles Manson and his 100 family members were coming up with all sorts of crazy plans and targeting some high-profile individuals for their deadly attacks. They were responsible for the terrible fate of Sharon Tate and her friends, as well as many other innocent victims. It was hard to understand why anyone would commit these crimes, but later became clear that Manson was manipulating his followers. The criminal mastermind was operating a dangerous cult and was feeding his members hallucinating substances to convince them that the end of the world was near. This allowed him to order people like Patricia Krenwinkel around and have them carry out his dirty work. All the members were eventually caught and sent to prison, but it seems like Krenwinkel herself might not be sticking around for much longer. Krenwinkel will have a chance at an early release this year, although her chances are very slim. Considering the crime she took part in and the other one she helped plan, it's going to be hard for her to convince anyone that she is in fact a changed woman. Next up is the Blade Runner, better known as Oscar Pistorius. We all watched him make history at the 2012 London Olympics, but he completely destroyed his image with one terrible decision. Pistorius was arrested in 2013 following a terrible crime that targeted his own girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. Pistorius claimed that he thought an intruder was breaking into his home in the middle of the night when he discharged a firearm at the suspect, who was actually Steenkamp, who was already in the house. Although he pleaded his innocence throughout the trial, he was eventually sentenced to 13 years in prison. That might seem pretty late for a crime that had irreversible consequences, but Pistorius didn't even need to serve his full sentence. Pistorius had actually submitted for early parole on numerous occasions, but was denied each time. In January 2024, however, his wish was finally granted. He was released on parole just 9 years after his terrible crime, much to the displeasure of Steenkamp's family and others around the world. Pistorius was of course the first paraplegic to compete against able-bodied runners at the Olympics, but it's obvious that his running career is over. It'll be interesting to see what kind of a life the Blade Runner will be able to live now with this terrible crime hanging over his head every single day. And finally, we have Susan Smith. Smith is a terribly troubled individual who tried everything to cover up her terrible crime. On October 25, 1994, Smith called the authorities and claimed that she had been carjacked while her 2 sons were still in the car. This prompted a nationwide search for the car, so police did everything they could to try and locate the boys. Smith also appeared on national TV and begged for their safe return. But after 9 days of searching, guilt finally got the better of Susan Smith. She shocked the world when she confessed that no carjacking had taken place. She had actually rolled the car into a river herself with her 2 sons still inside. While people tried to understand why any mother would do such a horrible thing, Smith also confirmed her twisted motive for her actions. Smith was dating a wealthy businessman named Tom Finley at the time of the incident, and he informed her that he did not want to be a father. Now, somehow this convinced Smith that her terrible crime was the only option she had. This did not go over well with the authorities. She was handed a life sentence with a chance of parole after 30 years for her actions. And now those 30 years have passed, this criminal could be released as early as November 2024. And that does it for our look at these celebrity criminals that will get released this year. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you all next time.